Dr. Leary, LSD has made you either a prophet or a pariah. What fashion would you use, or how would you summarize your own experiences with the drug? What has it done to you, to your mind?
First of all, we have to ask the question, what is LSD? LSD is a chemical, but it's not a drug. Most Americans are familiar with two drugs which change consciousness. Drugs which put us into a stupor, drugs which wake us up. Almost every American uses one of these two. We use opiates or tranquilizers or alcohol to put us into a nice, cozy stupor. Or we use drugs like pep pills or even coffee to wake us up. But there are many other levels of consciousness, many other levels of awareness which can be triggered off by chemicals. Now, LSD is not a drug like alcohol or a barbiturate. LSD is a chemical which contains several hundred Encyclopedia Britannicas. So when you talk to someone who's taken LSD, or if you ever see anyone who's taken LSD, his consciousness is being spun through many, many different levels of language, which are not the language of English or French or of Latin, but chemical languages of cell and nervous system, sense organ, which are many millions of years old. What's the reaction to taking LSD? If the person is unprepared and he swallows this local library of chemical messages, he's confused. He can be entranced and delighted, or he can be very frightened. Most of the people who develop what we call an LSD panic are people who take LSD not knowing what's going to happen. They think it's like a martini, or they think it's like a pep pill. It's not at all. It's a highly complicated engaging of nerve tissue and cell tissue within inside, which throws you into energy languages for which many people are not prepared, thus the confusion and the fear.
Who would you recommend take it?
Well, again, when we're talking about LSD, we're talking about an instrument, like the microscope, a form of energy. I think that any responsible adult who has demonstrated through training that he knows enough to use this form of energy should be allowed to do it. I am not in favor of indiscriminate use of LSD or of any form of energy. I think the motor car in the hands of an alcoholic or of a nut is a very dangerous instrument. Anything that man's technology has created can be dangerous if an unprepared person gets it. I'm in favor of strict licensing by government agencies, the way the automobile and the airplane is licensed, so that psychologically and physically prepared people who know what they're doing and who have serious purposes can use these wonderful and incredible keys to the wisdom and energy which is inside our body.
What kind of wisdom can such a person find for himself under the influence of the chemical?
Well, I have to use the example of the microscope. 300 years ago, if I were to say, do you know that there's a level of energy around us which is invisible, but which is powerful and beautiful and has all sorts of meanings, you think I was a nut or a pariah, and I'd be lucky to stay out of jail as I am today. The same thing is true of LSD. LSD is like a microscope, even an electron microscope, which opens up awareness of energies which are there. There's nothing miraculous or mysterious about LSD. It opens up energies which are there, and I think will be used in the future as a form of education, as a form of self-growth. In any situation where we now use our symbolic mind, the microscope of LSD will help us see more, see faster, and see deeper.
What therapeutic value, if any, could LSD have?
You mean in psychiatry?
In psychiatry, in clinical psychology.
Well, naturally, the psychologists and psychiatrists want to use LSD in treating mental illness. I think that LSD will be the #1 cure for mental illness when the psychologists know how to use it, because it's a microscope, but unless you know how to use the microscope and know what to put under it and how to describe and communicate what you found, the microscope leads to confusion. But when psychologists know how to use LSD, I think it will be extremely beneficial in understanding and treating mental illness. But it's not mainly a psychiatric tool. It's a tool of education. It's a tool for every person who is responsible enough to use it to open up his consciousness. Because the problems that man faces today of learning, of mental illness, of emotional maturity. No government agency or no profession can solve these problems for you. I've got to do it for myself, you've got to do it for yourself, and all the viewers have got to do it for themselves. And keys like LSD must be used for self-administration by trained people.
LSD is not simply, as you say, a joy drug or a joy chemical.
Not at all.
But there seems to be quite a group of people who are taking it for kick, for self-indulged use of LSD throughout our civilization, could noticeably improve man's relationship with his environment and with himself.
I am completely convinced of that. And I'm not just speculating. You see, LSD is here to stay. 1 million doses are being used in the United States today, and the nature of LSD is that one user converts in his enthusiasm 2 or 3 others, so there'll be 3 or 4 million people using LSD in the next 2 or 3 years. These forms of energy are here to stay, like the microscope and like atomic energy. You can't pass laws against them. And I'm convinced that the use of chemicals which open up the mind and put us in touch with our ancient wisdom which is inside are going to lead man to be more harmonious with other men. We're going to learn to be more harmonious with the other forms of energy, plant and vegetable and air and animal around us. I do think that LSD and other drugs which are coming along, even more powerful in their effects to open up the mind, are going to dramatically change man's way of life. It makes us think that the world comes in little sentences and straight lines. It's only a few hundred years old, and man's cells and man's sense organs and man's chemicals, which come from his own body and from outside, have been the sources of information for millions of years before the printing press and radio and television came along.
What kind of caution would you, as LSD's leading prophet, offer to those who might be tempted to take it not in the proper conditions or without the proper control or fully knowing what they were going about?
The only thing to fear from any form of energy is ignorance. It's the ignorant person who causes damage and destruction to himself and to others. We're in the same position now with LSD that we were 70 years ago with the automobile. Here's a new and powerful form of energy which is going to change our way of life. It's going to take a generation. I want to lift that up. You want to just continue and pick up?